Welcome to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. Hi everyone, I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money gamer extraordinaire. Today we're talking about why families do generational planning with registered investment advisors and certified financial planner, Rob Odell and Heather Coulter. Welcome to the show, Rob and Heather.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about how longevity, human longevity is pushing us out. Now we're talking about not 3 generations, we're talking about 4 generations. I'm thinking I may see great grandkids.
Absolutely.
I can't even conceive of that. You walk through this whole technology of generational planning. This is what you do. You're both registered investment advisors and certified financial planners. So I want you to walk me through why this matters and why everybody's looking to adopt this platform.
Well, you hit on it, Steve, that people are living longer. There's 4 generations in the marketplace today. Technically there's 6 alive. So people who are out buying goods and services, doesn't matter what they are, there's 4 of them. And understanding how each generation communicates and kind of their own nuances can be very beneficial for the person who is a small business owner and is selling products and services to the various generations.
Now, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking of the historic times we're living in and all these things that are happening. Walk me through this basic list to give our audience a little bit of a clarity.
Well, let's first talk about emerging affluence and affluence. The baby boomers and the seniors or the mature generation, so those people born after or before 1945 and the boomers, which are before 1965, they grew up in a time of emerging affluence, meaning that America was being invented. We're post-World War II. Exciting things were happening. And the emphasis was on the team, not the individual. It was a one-for-all mentality, if you will. It was about the team and helping each other do better. People born into affluence, which is Generation X, Heather and myself, and the millennials, you go back to the Renaissance and see studies on this, is that when you have affluence, you have delayed life. And the emphasis is no longer on the team, it's on the individual. You remember the United States Army, the Army of One? It's not true, but the Army of One.
Now, Heather, when I'm looking at this, it says sell, like nobody wants to be sold. I don't want to be sold any product. I go out for a car, I dread it. I dread purchasing a car. So what's the difference here? When I'm looking at that, talk to me about that.
Well, the communications for the different generations, you have to understand them because we like to be communicated to differently. So the baby boomers, they like recognition. They like the look and the feel and the persona when they walk in the door. The Gen X, you have to be careful where we don't want to be sold to. We don't want to be pitched to. We will have already done a lot of the research before walking into your store or your business. We already know a lot about you. So we're already 50% there. So if you can just show us, to save us time and just show us and help us to what we're trying to get to, that's how we will purchase things.
When I think about this issue of talking to people that we're our consumers that are watching our show, they're always going, do you get me? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Is that different from different generations?
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
You give me a little demarcation line on each one here.
Sure. Well, the mature generation, they are about tenure in the marketplace. How long has your company been in business in your community? How many generations are there? Are there 2 or 3 generations working in your small business that you might have?
They love that stability.
They like stability. Name brand recognition, very, very big. They trust that. The baby boomers, a little more optimistic. You're about team. If you're going to hire someone, whether an attorney, CPA, small business owner, you come on my team if you can help me. And so they're very team friendly.
And they like to hear a story. They like to hear your story. How did you build? How did you start your business? They like to hear, understand that.
Now that's funny because they want to hear that from a boomer point of view, but the moment we get to Gen X, they don't hear any of
I
this.
don't want to hear about that. We
already know. We've done research online.
We've already done the research and we've already read your story, so to speak. So we don't need to hear you talk about yourself.
Okay, no pontification. Get to the point.
Get to the point. No idle chatter.
Well, now when I think about the different, when we're having, our consumers are different. We're going to have 4 generations represented here. Some of my boomers are going, of course I want to know about this guy. I want to know if he's trustworthy or not. And then I got the same tactic may fail with Gen X and Millennials. I don't want to hear any of that. I've already done my R&D on you, and I don't want to hear about it.
Right. So if a Gen Xer shows up at your place of business, chances are they spend time researching you, whether through LinkedIn, looking, Googling, anything online, website. I've heard the statistic that for a Gen Xer, the average amount of time they research a car online is 16 hours. So when they show up at the lot, they know what car they want, they know about financing options.
And the price they're going to pay.
Exactly. They know everything about it. And so the salesperson on that car lot ceases being a salesperson and becomes a facilitator. Much different, and that applies also to the millennials.
I noticed you talked about this popular guy out on the webcam, Martin.
He's great,
cool guy.
There you go.
He talks about generational insights, and the reason I'm bringing this to us today is because There's different ways of attacking money. Every generation has their way of viewing it.
Correct.
He has some unique insights.
Well, he built a whole business around it.
Right.
He speaks all over the country on the 4 generations and how, in 2 facets. One, inter-business in terms of how you do business with the various generations, then intra-business in terms of, let's say you have a business, you might have all 4 members employed at that business, and how they communicate as fellow employees is very important.
Heather, when I'm talking about the kind of things that Cam talks about, you're looking at it, you're kind of in between. You're a planner that's servicing seniors, baby boomers, and yet your own group, Gen X's, and then millennials. How do you see his insights? Have you seen that? Is there that much demarcation between these generations that you have to change your language and tactics?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to communicate differently. Like the different generations are either more comfortable with maybe technology, some of them aren't, so you have to understand and be careful there. A lot of them want to be just communicated with by text or email, so you need to understand you're not going to talk to them, and others, they just really guard their time, so you have to really be careful with that. So,
when we're doing multi-generational thinking like we are now, 4 generations, I can't even hardly believe that. Now we're going to be talking about different ways that each generation, they're going to have different views on money. We need to know that, especially if we're doing legacy planning for generation 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
If you're a senior or a boomer and you're thinking the way I'm thinking, which is I'm trying to figure out how to do some legacy planning now, we have to think about what money issues are important to them. We come back from the break, we're going to keep exploring this whole issue of multi-generational planning, especially within a family and small business. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And keeping more of your money is even harder these days with high taxes, fund expenses, and fees for financial advice. And when you consider the uncertainty of the market and the rising cost of living, the purchasing power of your dollar is constantly at risk. But a tax-deferred annuity with an inflation rider can be the most cost-effective way to generate increasing annual income without market volatility. For more information on how annuities may work for you, just email me at steve@thenameofthegame.tv and ask for our free annuity information. Well, welcome back to our second segment. Of course, we're with registered investment advisor and certified financial planners, Rob Odell and Heather Coulter, and we're walking through 4 generations of planning now, and everybody looks at money differently. I would have thought that what I taught my children is what I received from my parents. We're just handing this down from one generation to another, and you say not.
Not the way it's communicated.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, right today, as we said at the previous show, historic times, there are 4 generations in the marketplace. 4 generations coming through people's doors, buying products, services from small business owners out there. Each generation is unique, and we need to understand the characteristics and little things, what to do, and more importantly, what not to do with the various generations. So to define these 4 generations that are in the marketplace, we'll start with the oldest first, which is known as the senior or the mature generation. They're also known as the traditional, silver, silent, or builder generations. A lot of names there. Wow. They're defined as people born pre-1945. Now, today's marketplace, they're the most affluent generation. They come in, they pay cash when they buy cars and houses.
right.
They're debt averse usually.
They're also very male-dominated, especially in the financial roles. So usually the female may come along and she may not for some of those meetings, or for those purchases even. But the male is making those decisions.
This generation is also the first off-the-farm generation. They're known for their work ethic. And so they work very, very hard. And the older members of the generation were Korea, the younger ones were Vietnam. They have trust in experts. So if someone gets up to speak, they'll put trust in them. They'll look at the letters after their name. They'll look at their tenure, their credential, time in the community, what they give back to the community. That's very important.
And according to this, when they go to retirement, they're not doing a hybrid, I'm working and getting my Social Security and pulling my 401k. I'm retiring.
They're on the golf course.
They're on the golf course. Yep. Okay, well, let's talk about my favorite group.
Mine too.
The boomers. I am a boomer, and I'm, you segment this into 2 groups.
Yeah, it's early and late boomers that you can have. Early boomers, you tend to be much more optimistic. Eternally young.
I am.
You think death is something you take a prescription and get rid of? That's the type of mentality.
All over that.
Exactly, right. Now this generation is the most influential. The older generation is affluent. This is influential. So CEOs, the president, vice president, members of Congress, members of this organization, this generation. They were raised in time of emerging affluence, meaning they were about the team, the one-for-all mentality. And something we see is that they're optimistic and driven, but one of the things that characterizes them
They're friends with their children. They're very close with their children. They do a lot, maybe sometimes too much for their kids.
Right, right.
And have you seen that as planners, that sometimes the boomers will sacrifice their own retirement to help those kids out.
We see it all the time.
So they can be debt-free when they come out of college. That's some sacred right that their children have to have. Now, it's a nice thing to do.
Right, it is, if they have the capacity to do. But sometimes we have to have those difficult conversations. The capacity's not there.
How do they receive it when you talk that way?
Well, it's difficult. We have to show them, but sometimes the numbers do the talking, and they just have to understand.
And they get it.
Yeah, they have to understand that they have to.
The math can be the great equalizer.
Right, exactly. And they need to learn to take care of themselves, or they're going to be a burden on their children in the future if they don't, and they get that.
Okay, now your generation, Gen X, which sounds like the generic X is the generic brand.
That's our brand.
Yeah.
Now, we're the smallest of the generations. We're sandwiched in between the boomers and the millennials. We're defined as people born between 1966 and 1980. We're cynical. We're mistrustful. In fact, there's someone in your life that you do not like or kind of resent. Chances are it's a member of our generation.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Characteristics is we are the first real generation of divorce. We're known as latchkey generation. We used to come home to empty houses. And because of that,
Single-parent homes.
we tend to work in isolation more than the boomers who like community. We're the first generation to really research, I like to say, stalk online. No matter what we're buying, we're going to stalk it. We're going to learn everything about the good or service, and then we're going to swoop in and buy it.
And your term stalking really is you're going to research this thing.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I want to get hip to your Gen X
Yeah,
talk.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a completely different, I mean, we're talking about people who are just like going to be, by the time they come to my office, Gen X's already know what they want, who they know about me.
Right.
Pretty good idea. They've researched
They're pre-sold in some respects.
Right.
Unless you
Whatever.
drool on yourself, you're probably,
financial products. They pretty much got it handled on this going
Correct.
in.
Yes.
Wow.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about this last generation, the millennials, this is, those are, some of those are my kids, right? And the millennials, well, first time I heard the whatever from one of my kids, I wanted to take them out to the backyard. I said, whatever, who are you talking to, What does that mean, the whatever generation?
They're also known as a special generation. From the time they came out of the womb, they were called special by mom and dad.
Yes.
And not in the same way their parents were called special by their mom and dad.
Regardless of their achievements.
Right.
Right, regardless,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Right.
they could even just participate, and they'll get a trophy or a ribbon.
Well, I was looking at, I loved your alliteration here. Protected, programmed, praised.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think on another episode that we were talking about, Heather, you brought up wow, I got a ribbon for 11th place.
Yes.
It's like 11th place. Wow.
Yeah.
What's the wake-up call for a millennial when he finds out nobody's handing ribbons out in
They
real
go out
life?
into the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get into the workplace, and now they're working for the Gen Xers and the baby boomers, and that's not going to work. They're not going to get praised, and they're not going to get that immediate respect they got at home.
What's it like when you have to actually earn your way up the food chain from a vocational point of view?
Yeah, it's
Right.
a big learning
That's new.
experience.
It's new for 'em.
This is the part I want to ask you about, because as we're all talking about money, millennials want to make money. They want to save money.
Absolutely.
They have their own goals. But how can you have big goals and no plans? I don't understand that.
They're just dreamers. Millennials, they tend to be dreamers, and they just don't understand the actions and the follow-through that they need help to make those dreams come true.
And I noticed that you say they're cause-driven.
Yeah. Well, think about who their parents were. The boomers, majority of this generation, the boomers are cause-driven, and they like community, and they're friends with their parents. And so they take on many of this, maybe not the same causes, but kind of the same way their parents are passionate about things, they're passionate about the greater good.
When you think about four-generational planning, we are just based on human longevity alone. Our life expectancies are reaching new frontiers. Most of the think about this, most boomer gals who are non-smoker, preferred health, are going to all see early 100s. I mean, if it just based by that, and the numbers that your generation, what's that going to be like? Everybody's going to be moving into this new centurion lifestyle. 4 generations, wow. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank Rob Odell and Heather Coulter for being my special guests and today's Money Mentors. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor or your legal counsel. And remember, as the good Reverend John Wesley once said, make all you can, save all you can, keep all you can. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.